The last of the advanced option settings, the general options. You can have Excel provide some feedback with either sound or animation. You can have it ignore other applications using dynamic data exchange. You can set it to prompt you to update links or not. You can have Excel display interface errors that are caused by add-ins. You can scale the content on your print job to equal the page size that it's actually getting printed on. You can choose to show customer-submitted Office.com content or not. You can direct Excel to open up all the files in a designated location. There's a bank of web options that control how your workbook is displayed when it's viewed in a browser. You can turn on and off multi-threaded processing for the quad processors that are available in computers these days. You can disable undo for pivot tables that are large when they are calculated. You can edit custom lists, and you can resolve some Lotus compatibility problems. So we're going to go back to the Advanced Excel Options dialog box, Alt-FT, left-clicking Advanced, scrolling down. We can have Excel and actually the other Office programs as well make some sounds that are activated by the various program events. When you left-click this, provide feedback with sound, and then left-click OK, you'll have to install an add-in in order for this functionality to work. I'm not going to do that. The next option, provide feedback with animation. It's not selected. I'm going to turn it on to show you what it will do. With just a quick example by inserting some columns, you'll notice when I do this that this doesn't snap the columns in there. When I insert, there's some movement that takes place. I've now turned the option off so we can get a comparison where the columns are just sort of popped in there without any indication that it actually happened. So the animation, at least in this case, lets you know that something actually took place by watching the columns move over and the new ones being inserted. The downside to this is it consumes computing capacity. The next option, ignore other applications that use dynamic data exchange. Some applications will use the same data in some cases as Excel, and this can create conflicts. With this option turned on, you can have Excel ignore those other applications. This can, from what little I understand about it, can create problems in and of itself. The option after that is checked by default, asked to update automatic links. If you have a workbook that's linked to other data, you'll automatically get a prompt when you open up the workbook that will ask whether you want to update those links or not. With this box cleared, you won't get that prompt. The links will be updated automatically. The next option, show add-in user interface errors. If there's user interface errors that are caused by add-ins that you've installed in Excel, checking this box will actually display those errors. The default is to have this box deselected. The next item, scale content for A4 or 8.5 by 11 paper sizes, has to do with Excel automatically getting information from the printer as to what the size paper that it's printing on is, and then scaling the content accordingly. The next option, which again is selected by default, show customer submitted Office.com content, has to do with the bank of templates that are shown that have been submitted by customers. With this box cleared, you won't see those templates that have been submitted by customers displayed as templates that you can access and open. The next option allows you to establish a location for which Excel will open all of the workbooks contained in that location when you start up the program. After that, we have a bunch of web options that will control how your workbook displays in a browser. So if you save this workbook as a web page or a single web page, which is an option that's a Microsoft option that's currently not supported by other browsers other than Internet Explorer, you have a lot of option settings regarding the browser, the files, and so on. Pictures, fonts. Enable multi-threaded processing allows Excel to take full advantage of the processors that are in your computer. There's a lot of computers that have quad processing. This gives Excel access to the full power of the processing capabilities of your computer. Next, disable undo for large pivot table refresh operations to reduce refresh time. Pivot tables can consume a lot of storage capacity, a lot of memory space, because there's a cache file that the pivot table is actually working from, and it doesn't really work from your data directly. So large pivot tables can be rather bulky, especially if they're dealing with a large amount of data. This is selected by default to reduce the rendering time when you're refreshing a pivot table. You can deselect this if you don't want to lose the ability to undo the refresh for the pivot table. And further, you can refine the size of the pivot table that you want this to apply to. And then we have custom lists to use in sorts and fill sequences. This was actually covered in another movie, so I'm not going to cover it again here. And lastly, there are Lotus compatibility solutions, which I'm not going to cover in detail. So those are the general advanced options. We can have Excel provide some feedback with either sound or animation. We can have it ignore other applications that use dynamic data exchange. We can have Excel prompt us before it updates links, or we can have it update the links automatically. We can have Excel show user interface errors when you're using add-ins. We can have Excel scale the output of a print job to the size of the paper it's actually printing on. We can have Excel provide us access to customer submitted content. We can have Excel open all of the workbooks in a given location when we start the program. We have a whole bank of web options. If our workbook is going to be rendered in a browser, we have some control over that rendering process. We can enable multi-threaded processing. We can disable undo for large pivot tables when we're refreshing them. We have the ability to create custom lists for sorts and fill sequences, and we can resolve some Lotus compatibility issues.